way too fast, way too fast, way too fast, too fast.
Hello, welcome. We're glad you've joined us today. Next slide, please. I'm Kathy Leibowitz, and I serve as the current chair of the RAC Communications Subcommittee. And on behalf of the subcommittee, welcome to the February 22, 2022 RAN. Next slide. We have a few notes as we get started. We are recording the meeting. The presentation and slides will be posted online. Participant video and mics are muted. Chat is disabled. Live captioning is on. We would appreciate it if you could use the Q&A feature to submit questions. We also take a moment to acknowledge that U of M is located on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. We acknowledge the sovereignty of tribal lands, and we reaffirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabeg ties to this land, as well as the profound contributions of Native Americans to this institution. Next. We have a full agenda today with presentations on the new Foundation Relations website, federal sponsor, other support, and international engagements, the RAC DEI work group, as well as updates from our central offices. Next. But first, community kudos. Please join me in congratulating the 2021 AIM Higher cohort on completing their CRA and joining the ranks of the CRA victors at U of M. The 2021 AIM Higher cohort was opened up to other institutions for the first time. So this cohort also includes new CRAs from the University of North Carolina, the Research Foundation at SUNY Albany, and the University of Wyoming. Next slide. This year, the OVPR expanded the awards program, recognizing excellence across 10 categories of research staff. We wanted to remind everyone that the deadline for nominations is next Monday, February 28th. Next. I am delighted, absolutely delighted to introduce today's MC, our colleague Sue Kelch, who is recently of the Medical School Grant Services and Analysis Office of Research. Sue officially retired last week, and we are extraordinarily grateful that she is sharing her time with us today. Sue joins us with over 36 years at U of M. She has worked in departments that sent a man to the moon, where the first polio vaccine was announced, and where innovative and life-saving treatments for disease and injury are implemented. Sue is passionate about research and administration and the profession of research administration. And we are in for a treat today. Next slide. Sue has been recognized by NCURA at both the regional and national level seen here along with other recognizable faces with the Ankura Band. Work hard, play hard. Next, please. Sue is a tireless advocate for the research administration profession. She has been instrumental in creating and growing the CRA program at U of M. You can find a lot of information on the CRA and the AIM Hire program on the ORSP website, as well as a list of other CRAs at U of M. And now to Sue.
Thank you. Next slide. So thank you for inviting me to be the MC today, and thank you for the kind introduction. It's been my pleasure to spend my career as a research administrator at the University of Michigan. I will also say that I do miss attending these RAND meetings in person, although on a day like today, it's kind of nice we don't have to go out in the rain, but I sure miss those cookies. It's been my pleasure at the University of Michigan to support the AIM Hire CRA study group and advance the profession of research administration. The CRAs at the university grew from a handful to 100 over the past 5 years, as more and more research administrators and their units understand the value. And if you're interested in knowing, yes, we have more CRAs than OSU and MSU combined. Obtaining your CRA is a journey, as life begins after the CRA. For in order to maintain your certification, as in any profession, you need to stay current in the field and accumulate contact hours. I'd like to give a shout out to Danielle Smith, for without her, this program would not have gotten off the ground. She had started a study group at her own institution and brought that expertise with her. I'd also like to give a shout out to Melissa Carby, as she also helped lay groundwork for the study program. Next slide. I would also like to acknowledge Karina Burkhart and Melissa Lee. I leave the continuation of the AIM Hire CRA study group in their very capable hands. And if you haven't signed up for the spring 2022 CRA study cohort, there's still time. Next slide. Next, I would also like to thank Stephanie Blackmore and the group of CRA volunteers listed here. Not only does the University of Michigan have a CRA study group website, but we also have a CRA Victors website. This serves as a resource for CRAs who want to learn more about professional development opportunities to help them maintain their contact hours. Stephanie's group organized a worksheet that shows professional development activity at the University of Michigan and professional development groups with a link that's provided on this webpage. This worksheet shows how many contact hours are provided for each activity and will help our CRAs make sure they stay on top of their contact hours. Next slide. So I survived 36 years at the University of Michigan. You can too. Next slide. What I'd like to do is show you a research administration roadmap with a couple tools and tips for you along the way. But first, a word from the following. We have, next slide. We have information on the Foundation Relations website. Please let me introduce Katie Lindner. She's an Associate Director of Foundation Relations, where she supports faculty seeking funding in the School for Environment and Sustainability, School of Information, Stamps, School, and School of Music, Theater, and Dance. Prior to Foundation Relations in 2016, she worked in prospect research with Michigan's Office of University Development, where she has assisted major gift officers with identifying potential donors to the university. Also, Christina Bennett is the Senior Development Assistant for Foundation Relations in the Office of Development. She is responsible for content management for the new internal-external Foundation Relations websites, as well as communications regarding upcoming opportunities. Next.
Thank you, Sue, for that lovely introduction, and for Chris for hosting Christina and I. I'm Katie Linder. I work in Foundation Relations, and Christina and I are here to talk about our new foundations.umich.edu website. We've had this website for about 10 years or so. I believe it was developed in the early 2010s. At the time, it was considered state of the art and attracted a lot of attention. I think my predecessor presented at a lot of conferences, and it was a popular website, but over time, it just aged, as websites tend to do, and it needed a significant refresh. And when we were thinking through the refresh of what the new design looked like, we realized that the site that had originally been built back in 2010s was built with the idea that faculty would come to the website, they would spend a lot of time learning about foundations, they would learn about how foundations operated, how they were different from federal sponsors, they would learn a lot about like the types of funding opportunities in their particular area. And what we discovered through taking a look at our own website metrics and through other conversations was that faculty were actually really just coming to our website for a particular funding opportunity. So for example, the Keck Foundation has its major research proposals that are due twice a year, and we tend to promote those funding opportunities via an email to faculty. And so faculty would click on the link from our email and go to that page directly and get the information they needed and then left. And so when we redesigned the site, we redesigned it with that in mind, that faculty were actually really coming to take a look at current funding opportunities, what's available. They want the information that they need to apply for that particular call for proposals. And so we have built our new website with that information in mind. Christina's going to do a demo, but some of the highlights include funding opportunities that have the basic information that faculty will need for a particular call. How much money is it for? Over what time period? When is the first application deadline? What does the faculty member need for that first application deadline? And then where we have it, any kind of insight and advice. For some of these funders, we've been applying to them for years and we've had success. The Packard Foundation is a really good example. With their fellowship programs, we've acquired a lot of information and knowledge, and we share that information on our website and in insights and advice. So it's our best advice for faculty to put their best foot forward. Then there are a subset of funders that aren't RFP driven. They don't have hard deadlines, and they invite proposals usually by contacting a program officer. And so we've built foundation profiles for some of those funders. You can think of the Mellon Foundation, one of the major humanities funders, the Kellogg Foundation based here in Michigan, and other funders like that have program areas, and the university has gotten tens of millions of dollars from them, but they don't have calls for proposals. And at the same time, we have a lot of insight as to how to apply to those as well. And so we've created foundation profiles with that insight based on decades and decades and decades of experience that we have working with those funders. And then finally, the Grant Writers Toolkit, which may be of particular use for all of you. It's just a one-stop place where we have a list of, common attachments that a foundation might require. So things like a 501c3 letter, the Board of Regents list, university financial reports. We also have boilerplate language. So for a lot of funders are starting to ask about the university's DEI priorities. And so we have language around that to help that faculty can insert into their proposals and use as they're working on these. We have sample proposals, just a treasure trove of information and advice on writing grant applications for foundations. And then finally, in addition to this foundations.umich.edu website, which is targeted at faculty, it's an internal password protected login for U of M faculty and staff only. We also created an additional foundation relations.umich.edu website, and this is for external audiences, so it's probably more of an FYI for you, just know that this exists. It's a place where we have stories of faculty successes. So for example, we got a Sloan Foundation Fellowship recently, and so we were able to use the university's press release and put that a link to that on our website as well. The audience there is really meant to be program officers, where we can again share successful stories of faculty and share where we've gotten grants from funders. And there's a Twitter feed as well. So again, it's meant to promote the university's excellence. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina, who's going to do a demo of sites.
Hello, I'm gonna share my screen. All right. There we go. All right, so thanks, Katie. So I'm just going to show a few key features on our website that might be useful for you. Right now we're looking at the landing page for our internal website. If we click on opportunities, we're brought to a table that has all current open calls. You can browse by early career funding, limited submission opportunities, or current RFPs, which is the page that we're currently looking at. So in this table, you can search by opportunity, the dollar amount. There's a drop-down menu with the content area. You can search by a specific foundation, and then a due date. Some of these will have approximate dates. Maybe the foundation hasn't opened the call yet, doesn't have an exact due date, so it'll have an approximate, other ones will. You can also search by a keyword. So I'm going to show you what the Packard Fellowships opportunity currently looks like. So because this program is run yearly, we have a lot of detailed information. So this opportunity has a lot of information on it. Other ones might be not as meaty. So it might just have an award amount, a date, and then a link to where you can apply to. This one gives you a lot of information. So we see it's an early career, it's a limited submission. There's links for you where you can apply. You can download the presentation that Foundation Relations did and get the slide deck, who to contact if you have questions. Scrolling down, we have the eligibility information. We generally do an information session on this, so that information's here. And then proposal advice, requirements, and then current faculty and recent recipients of this award. So that shows one of the opportunities. I also want to mention the opportunity table is updated weekly, and generally there's about 100 RFPs on there at a time, give or take. The next page I'm going to show is our foundation profiles. So on this page, it looks really similar to the opportunity page. You can browse by Detroit foundations, U of M Top 20, or Medicine. Then scrolling down to the table, you can search by foundation, content area, and then also has who to contact if you need advice, have questions about approaching the foundation or about your application. If you were to click on the foundation name, it's going to take you to their actual website. So you'll want to click on Insights and Advice. That'll take you to the profile. I'm going to pull up the Mellon Foundation to show you what a profile would look like. So clicking on Insights and Advice. This one gives you the website, tells you it's a managed foundation, who to contact before you approach the foundation if you have questions. We have grant history, links to their program areas, about applying. This is our information about Insight that we have since we've worked with the foundation. And then recent U of M grants are all listed in here. And then lastly, I'm going to go over to the Grant Writers Toolkit. When we click on this page, we're shown a Q&A section, and then you can search by proposal, attachments, and data, sample proposals, and then our managed foundations. I'll click on the proposal attachments. So on here, there's commonly needed data and attachments for foundation applications. You'll find things like the 501c letter, annual reports, financial statements. Over here is the indirect cost database. If there's anything on here that you don't see that you might need, you can always email me and reach out. I'd be more than happy to assist you with any documents that you'll need. And then I'm going to click on sample proposals. This gives advice on writing successful proposals. And then scrolling down, you can click and download actual proposals that were submitted. So we have CAC, Burroughs Wellcome, among other ones. And then further down is boilerplate language that would help when putting your application and proposal together. So those are just a few key features of our internal website. And then I'm going to switch over and show you our external website so you can just see what that's about. So again, this is maybe if someone's Googling us, they'd come across this page, a program officer, a foundation. If you get here by mistake, there's a faculty and staff login page to get back to that internal site I just showed. But this one has the stories of impact that Katie was talking about. You can see somebody was recently awarded that Sloan Fellowship. So if you click on it, it'll take you to the article that was written. And then further down is our Twitter feed. You can follow us at UMichFR. And then on here is just more about us and then a contact page. So at this time, I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions.
Looks like we have one question. The question is there a way to download the list of funding opportunities to send them to PIs?
That is a good question. I don't think we have a feature right now that downloads it in an Excel format. Katie, do you know if there was a way?
I don't believe that's something we explored. That's a really good question. Certainly we could look into it and play around with it. But in the meantime, I think sending them the link and then having them filter on the funding opportunities might be the most efficient way to get them the information. But that's a really good question.
Then we have another question. Where is the DEI language?
It's in the Grant Writers Toolkit. I think it's a sample proposals page. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's language for different types of questions. You know, sometimes foundations will ask what the university is doing in terms of related to the environment and committing to lowering carbon emissions, things like that. And the DEI language is part of that. There, you know, there's language around what the city is doing in Detroit, language around what kind of work we might be doing in the health and medicine spaces, but it should be part of that.
Okay, and there are no more questions.
All right, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And if anyone had any questions, you can always reach out to me and Katie, and we'd be happy to help.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Back to Sue.
Oops, all right, hold on. Oop. Sorry, having a little trouble here. Getting my screen back. Okay, whoops. All right, so thank you. Thank you, Katie and Christina. Sorry for that little technical difficulty that I had. I know you all been waiting with bated breath about the rules of the road, right? So the rules of the road, and I'll go through all 4 of them for you. Make sure your tank is full. Use the map. Be a courteous driver. And when you reach your goal, buy a souvenir and pick another adventure. Next slide. So, rules of the road, number 1. Make sure your tank is full. Keep yourself charged in the profession of research administration. Join a professional organization and volunteer. There are many opportunities to serve on a committee, run for the board, and share your expertise as a presenter. Get your CRA. The University of Michigan can help with studying for the exam, as well as provide many professional development opportunities for you to maintain your certification by obtaining contact hours. We'll continue that next slide, but for now, we'll talk about federal sponsor, other support, and international engagements, what you need to do, what you need to know. Please let me introduce April Pepperdine. She's the Director of Conflict of Interest Program for campus in the Research Ethics and Compliance Office. She has been with the COI program for 11 years. The scope of the program has continually evolved, most recently including other support reviews for investigators on federally funded projects with international engagements. Also, David Mulder. He's the Assistant Director for Outside Interest Conflicts of Interest in the U of M Medical School Office of Regulatory Affairs. Previously, he was the Program Manager for International Engagement and Research Security in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. Take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Sue. So as Sue mentioned, April and I are going to be speaking today about some of the recent requirements that have come into place regarding other support and a little bit more specifically how they involve international engagements or other international activities that faculty may be involved with. Just as a reminder, Chris mentioned this, actually Kathy mentioned this at the top of the meeting, but please use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you might have. We'll try to respond to as many questions as possible in the time that we have here today. I'm not sure if we have the anonymous function turned on in the Q&A feature, but hopefully we don't, because if you include your name in your question, April and I will also get back to you after the RAN meeting if we're not able to answer your questions today. And then just a reminder, if your question is about a very specific circumstance or specific case, you might want instead to email our email group, which is at the bottom of every one of our slides. It's other.support.questions@umich.edu. So just a quick rundown of what April and I are going to cover today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the background and context of why we're here today to discuss this topic. Talk a little bit about biosketches and other support, how research administrators can help, what the central office review process looks like, a little bit about non-NIH sponsors, and then also where you can look for additional help or resources. Oh, there we go. Oh, too far. Okay. So a little bit of background, just to provide some additional context of why we're talking about this today. As most people are probably aware at this point, there's been an increased level of scrutiny on the part of our federal agency sponsors now for, it's been almost 2.5 years probably, going back to July of 2019 was really the first major announcement that we had when NIH issued a notification reminding recipient institutions of what their requirements are for reporting other support. And even though NIH at that point considered it to be a reminder to recipients, for the vast majority of us, it really felt like a new requirement when it came down to how we actually do things in practice. And then most recently, NIH actually did implement new requirements for biosketches and other support that are provided to NIH on or after January 25th, 2022. So just in the past few weeks, we've had new requirements go into effect. And I just want to remind everyone, specifically for those of you submitting to NIH, that these new requirements are in effect now, and they impact anything that you're submitting to NIH at this point. Even if you submitted your initial proposal prior to January 25th, if JIT is requested now or anytime in the future, the other support that you submit as part of that JIT request will need to meet the new NIH requirements. All right. So starting kind of at the beginning of the sponsored project lifecycle, in terms of biosketches and NIH's new requirements for biosketches, please be aware that the template has changed, including the actual format, the structure of the biosketch, what's included in the sections has changed. One of the sections has gone away entirely. So please make sure that you're using the most up-to-date format, and you can find that either on NIH's website or on the ORSP biosketch page, and we'll have links to that in the references section of our presentation later on. The biggest change that I want to draw people's attention to is in section B, which is positions, scientific appointments, and honors. The sort of the cosmetic change, which is also significant in terms of how many people it's going to impact is that the list that you provide there of your positions is now in reverse chronological order instead of forward chronological order. Also, NIH has made it clear in their instructions for biosketches that they want all current positions and scientific appointments, both domestic and foreign. Be sure to include any affiliations with entities or governments outside of the United States. They want to see any and all titled academic, professional, or institutional appointments. They don't care whether or not they're paid positions, and they don't care whether they're full-time, part-time, or voluntary. They still want to see them in your biosketch if they are active. All right, and now getting into the details on other support, April.
Yeah, so other support has changed as well. And I think there are some significant adjustments that we need to make for other support. But, overall, other support is any resources available to support any of an investigator's research endeavors. So we're looking at a very wide scope here. Disclose all active and pending sources of other support. And now the other support, NIH other support requires 2 sections, so projects and proposals and in-kind non-financial resources. So keeping in mind, we'll have active and pending in both of these 2 sections. So a little bit more on projects and proposals. This includes U of M projects, including those routed through ORSP, also internally funded, etc. So any formalized type of project. Projects not routed through U of M or conducted as part of a non-U of M appointment also need to be included. So we're really focusing on research here, or other types of projects that you might see through ORSP. Formal external consulting arrangements, which is new, that involve the design, conduct, or reporting of research. So this includes work that may result in publications in academic journal, designing a protocol, data analysis, serving on a steering committee for a clinical trial, and then some. So I think this is the most significant change within the other support for NIH. And we're happy to help. If anybody has any questions on individual situations, please do reach out. The email is at the bottom of every slide. Switching gears a little bit to in-kind support. So in-kind resources that meet certain criteria must be included in other support. So there's a link here, making sure that the investigators evaluate this criteria to determine if in-kind resources need to be included. Keep in mind, in-kind resources from NIH's perspective can be a person, place, or thing. So we're talking about people here too. And I know it's a little awkward, but we really need to reframe our thinking. In-kind resources include, again, but are not limited to personnel, visiting scholars, visiting students supported by a non-U of M entity, space, office space or lab space at another institution, equipment, materials, or supplies as well. So in the criteria, you'll note that there are resources that are not widely available. So NIH is really looking for uniquely available resources to the investigator, and does not include resources, again, made broadly available to the institution, faculty, staff. So just keeping in mind, this is very specific, but please do reach out if you have any questions. Additional details here. So the revised NIH other support format does not include separate sections for foreign components, foreign appointments, affiliations, foreign collaborations, or visitors. So you might be used to seeing some of these sections on previous U of M templates, but they are not included specifically on the newest template. But it's really important to note here that any appointment, affiliation, collaboration, and or visitor information may actually need to be included as part of an individual entry for a project proposal or in-kind resource. So it might be connected with something that does need to go into other support. For sources of other support that are not routed through U of M and are with an entity outside the US, the investigators need to provide supporting documentation. These documents should be submitted in their original language and, if applicable, with an English language translation. So machine translations are acceptable, such as Google Translate. NIH has stated that they will accept that. Just as a reminder, supporting documents may be available in MN form. The investigators can currently access that. And as we go through this process, we'll be evaluating other system enhancements. So others, RAs, et cetera, may be able to access those as well. The other final important detail here, a digital signature is required on all other support documents using a software application like SignNow, where there is some sort of history trail that we could pull up if needed for NIH. Back to you, David.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how research administrators can help. First of all, and probably the most obvious, is to familiarize yourself with the most recent sponsor requirements and be on the lookout for additional changes. So what we've heard from NIH and NSF is that they, from their perspective, their current requirements are fairly stable. It's possible that we'll see some additional refinements and clarifications come out now that NIH's new requirements have finally gone into effect. But probably the bigger concern for some folks is going to be how other agencies, not NIH, not NSF, start to adopt some of the same types of requirements. So if you are someone who is submitting to other agencies, definitely keep your eyes and ears open for changes that may be coming for those, as well as, like I said, some of the further refinements and clarifications from NIH and NSF in particular. Also, kind of more in the nuts and bolts of things, how you can help is to make sure that you're using the correct sponsor format. So we'll have a reference slide later on that links to pages where you can get all the latest format for NIH in particular. And for NSF and NIH, they are requiring that other support or current and pending include a statement about overlap or lack of overlap in terms of the science, the budget, or the committed effort. So we've included an example here that you could use to indicate that there is no overlap in science budget or committed effort. However, obviously, if there is, you need to state that. As April mentioned, the electronic signature is required, so you can check to make sure that that has been completed. Make sure that the PDF of your other support has been flattened and meets any file size requirements. And then for NIH, as April mentioned, if there is any supporting documentation required, make sure that that's also in your other support PDF. So what's going to be happening then in the central offices in terms of review of other support? So just a reminder really that what ORSP staff are going to be looking at when you submit other support or current and pending support, they're going to make sure that there are no expired projects listed in active status, that no investigators report more than 12 calendar months of effort, that those required overlap statements are present and complete, that investigator signatures are there, at least for NIH, who are currently requiring those, and that any basic sponsor formatting requirements have been met.
Okay, so you might be wondering why COI is here. So what COI does during this other support review is we are actually reviewing sponsor documentation and M-Informed disclosures at just-in-time and award for investigators with international engagements. So we're really doing this kind of congruency review as you see in this figuring here, where M-Inform, the BioSketch, and other support may include similar or the same information, but also might have different information that doesn't need to be included in any of those places. So we're just making sure that everything has been reported appropriately. As a result of these other support reviews, ORSP and COI staff may work with the project team to make any necessary changes and updates. So we'll reach out to investigators and we will work with them to determine if what they reported in M-Inform may need to be included in other support, or if they included something in other support that may not need to be included. So, just making sure that everything is accurate to the university's best knowledge, and then assisting in submission of revised sponsor documentation if required. So depending on the situation, we very well may contact the research administrator to assist in some of these updates. If it's a missing signature or formatting thing, that's definitely something that we would rely on the RA to assist with.
Okay, and then also just a reminder and a request for help. One of NIH's new requirements is that throughout the life of the award, if the university becomes aware of any source of active other support that should have been reported either as part of the JIT other support or in one of the annual RPPRs, but was not included for some reason, we need to report that to NIH within 30 days. So if you or one of your project team members becomes aware that some active source of other support was inadvertently left off of an other support document that should have gone with JIT or at an RPPR, please contact us at other.support.questions@umich.edu as soon as you become aware of it, and we'll work with you and with ORSP to make sure that all of the potentially impacted projects for all of the sponsors get notified as required. Another thing that you can do throughout the life of the award is seek prior approval for foreign components. Foreign components are really a totally separate animal from other support or current and pending support. And if you would like to learn more about those, we encourage you to register for a Navigate webinar that we're going to be having in March, and April will be sharing some more about that in just a minute. But first, a word from our other sponsors. So we've been focused mostly on NIH so far today. The good news is that for the most part, if you are in compliance with NIH's requirements that went into effect on January 25th, you are in compliance with what other sponsors have implemented in terms of requirements. Some of the biggest differences between NIH and NSF, at least, are that right now only NIH is currently requiring any supporting documentation. Also, NIH right now is the only sponsor that's requiring an electronic signature. In the current and pending that gets submitted to NSF, they require that the overlap statement be present for each individual project, whereas NIH has one overlap statement at the bottom of the other support document. And for some of the more detailed differences that might be out there in terms of what types of activities need to be reported to NIH versus NSF, we would encourage you to consult a new resource that we've developed, the U of M Disclosure Matrix, which lists a whole variety of different activities that faculty may be involved in and provides information on where that activity needs to be reported and when, whether that's in the M-Inform system here at U of M, whether it's in a sponsored BioSketch or other support / current and pending, etc. So definitely something to take a look at. Okay, so
help. If you need help, please contact us. So COI staff at coi.support@umich.edu. Feel free to contact this if there's any M-Inform disclosure questions. We provide ongoing one-on-one consultations, happy to assist research administrators as well as investigators. We have office hours during July disclosure periods, so I'm sure everybody is aware July 1st opens up our annual M-Inform outside activity disclosure cycle. So we have some office hours then. And then please contact us about any general questions about outside interests or potential conflicts of interest. And the other support review team at other.support.questions@umich.edu. You're welcome to contact this email address, which will go to us as well, for initial proposal submissions, biosketches, foreign components, just-in-time materials, including other support, supporting documentation, progress reports, RPPRs, and then previously undisclosed other support. So I know we mentioned already, but if there is something that was undisclosed, we do have to report that to NIH within 30 days. So we want to make sure that we're timely on that. So please reach out. When in doubt here, disclose, report it. We only can encourage you to try to evaluate what needs to be reported, but if we're not sure, we will disclose it. Also, when in doubt, reach out, please. Either of these email addresses or offices can help you. We'll connect you to the right resources, and we very well can help you directly. So here are some resources. Again, David mentioned the upcoming Navigate webinar on March 24th from 1 to 2 p.m. The disclosure matrix is incredibly helpful, I think, where we inform you of what to disclose or investigators what to disclose and where. Outside activity disclosure guidance. So this is mainly for what to disclose in M-Inform. And then NIH other support reporting and BioSketch websites. They include very valuable resources such as the checklist for BioSketches, other support and RPPRs, other support template. You can access that there. If you contact us, we might need you to use that template in place of what you may already be attempting to submit. Common other support examples are also included here as well. We have an NSF current and pending support and BioSketch webpage on the ORSP website, and then new other support review process webpage on the Research Ethics and Compliance COI website. Again, email questions to other.support.questions or coi.support as they arise. So it looks like we did get a couple of questions in. David, I'll go ahead and ask you, so we might be able to answer them. So the one question here from Mitchell, specific question related to an NIH document causing ongoing application warnings. Has anyone heard any updates on whether graphics will be allowed in the specific aims?
I have not heard anything about that. So if any of my friends and colleagues in ORSP have heard anything about that, please feel free to chime in. But otherwise, we'll have to do some more digging on that.
Great. And then sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, April, David, I wonder if that question is related to file size, and maybe it's not so much the image, but file sizes cannot exceed 6 megabytes, which is, I know you mentioned, David, earlier that it's important to flatten the PDF. I don't know if that helps the person who asked the question, but just in case.
Thanks, Constance.
Thank you. Okay, and then Mary asks, in the person months table, what years are to be included, current and future or past years?
Current and future, current budget period and forward.
Okay, well, that's the end of our questions. So thank you all so much for having us today.
Thank you very much, April and David. On to rules of the road, number 2. Next slide. Ask for help if you need it. Tap into your networks of fellow research administrators that you collaborate with at your institution through your professional organization and LinkedIn. Research administrators lift and promote their colleagues. Then pass your marked map to others so they may benefit from your experience and avoid construction delays, potholes, and dead ends. Rules of the road number 3. Be courteous. Congratulate your researchers on their awards and ask them about their research. Work with other administrators and researchers and treat them as you would like to be treated. Remember, you are part of something great, whether it be innovative treatments and surgeries, landing a person on the moon, or discovering a vaccine. And by the way, I have worked in departments that have done all of the above. Rules of the road number 4. When you reach your goal, buy a souvenir and pick another adventure. When you reach your destination, relax, enjoy the view, keep a memento, and choose another adventure. There's always something new and exciting in research administration. Next slide. And now on to our updates from sponsored programs, RSP, ITS, and RAC DEI work group.
Thanks, Sue. Next slide, please. First off, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for all the help getting reports submitted before the holiday break in December. Next slide, please. So the number of reports this year was actually higher than the previous year. We had almost 2,400 reports to submit, and so far 2,334 have been submitted or completed, and that's 98.56%. So thank you again for everything you do to help us get those submitted to the sponsors. Next slide. So now we're on to our spring cleaning, and today's a great day to start that since it's horrible outside. So next slide. We have a lot of closeouts to get done. So our current number of active closeouts is 1,618, and we have a number of those that are late, and that's 600. So we again are looking to partner with all of you to get those submitted to get those projects closed out. As you know, there could be charges that are sitting on one project that need to be moved to a continuation. But again, we just really are looking for your help in getting those closed out. Next slide, please. Now just to share an update on some audits that have been going on. So our uniform guidance audit is just about wrapped up. It's originally due on March 31st, but this year, because of the pandemic, we have until June 30th to get that submitted. PwC, our auditors, has everything just about wrapped up, and we will get that posted as soon as it is submitted. The other audit that is still ongoing, and we're actually, I think it's in audit resolution at NSF, is the OIG audit, where the NSF OIG was looking at how universities had rolled out all of the requirements based on the pandemic. And so at this point, we're just waiting to hear back from the audit resolution on our audit results. Next slide, please. I mentioned this before, that the university had hired an outside firm to do a full, like top to bottom, every building equipment inventory. And as a result, there were a number of sponsored assets that they were not able to locate. The first 49 of those, the property control staff have been working on with your help. They've been actually able to locate about a third of those assets and get a lot more information about the ones that were disposed of. Once they're done with those, they're going to move on to the next 225 assets. Those assets originally cost $50,000 or more, and were purchased since July 1st of '98. And they could be on an active project. So when we talk about active projects, we're talking about any project that is active or is a continuation from an old project. So there is a chance that it's an old project, but there's an active continuation. just to let you know, there will be another equipment inventory done by the external company this fall, so be prepared for that. And as a result of all of the equipment inventory and the work that's been done, there will be some improved processes. So more to come on that. Next slide, please. So I also wanted to just share a reminder. I spoke on this last October that we were embarking on an electronic version of the sub-PG form. That is live now in FinProd. And a rapid announcement went out yesterday with all of the information about it. So please take a look at that. Again, that is to save time in preparing your request. It gives you an opportunity to track the progress in workflow. There are some new fields available, and there's also instructions included. Next slide, please. And the other thing I wanted to share with you was regarding the NRSA Child Care Credit. So NIH had, as part of their ongoing efforts to develop programs that support family-friendly research environments, NRSA fellows and trainees can request up to $2,500 per budget period for licensed child care reimbursement. And to do that, there's a form available. It's available on ORSP's website, orsp.umich.edu/NRSA. And if you're requesting this for a pre-doc, they submit the form via email, and the address is here on the screen, and they will receive a stipend payment through Student Financials. If it's for a postdoc, it's submitted, this form is submitted via par request, and the payment will go through payroll, and it's going to be noted as an FEL, additional pay. Next slide, please. And I have some updates, some personnel updates. So it's bittersweet news, first off, that Dennis Posiewak is retiring at the end of this month, so next Monday. Dennis has been with the university for over 34 years, and we're really excited for him to be embarking on a new adventure of retirement. With that, we've hired Ann Dement as a contract administrator lead, and she started back in December, so some of you may have already started working with Ann. And then we also have a couple other new people. Nolan Hansen has returned to sponsor programs from a number of years in the School of Nursing. And we have a brand new accountant who started in January, Elkina Jackson. And she's working in the reporting area, doing her training right now. So I think that's all of my updates. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea.
Hi, everyone. So a few updates from ORSP. Next slide, please. Just a quick note before we launch into our agency updates. Just wanted to highlight a little bit of history for all of you. This is a photograph of Dr. Anna J. Cooper, who was the fourth Black American woman to receive a doctoral degree. She was a sociologist, and her research focused on Black feminism, and she's actually thought to be one of the first Black feminists to articulate the concept in her book, A Voice from the South. Next slide, please. So some agency updates. The NIH grant policy statement was updated on January 4th. There are just a few highlights in there. They added a link to the NIH disclosure table. They incorporated guidance on the NRSA child care costs, and they made several updates to guidance around diversity plans, particularly related to conference grants. We also received notice of the NIH salary cap being raised. It isn't quite official yet, so NIH is planning to release a further notice once they have their new budget for the year. Right now, I think they're still operating on a continuing resolution, so they'll officially release a notice later on. but they did release some guidance recently that says that you can start using the new salary cap level. So they've indicated you can use it in proposals and you can rebudget if your budget allows for existing awards. Next slide, please. DARPA has released a foreign conflicts matrix. We have a link here in the slide so you can go check it out on your own. But essentially, the matrix goes through and gives you guidance on how they will assess potential undue foreign influence, conflicts of interest, or conflicts of commitment. They're looking at 4 particular factors on the matrix: the foreign talents programs, denied entities list, your funding sources, and association or affiliation with foreign institutions or entities. NSF has also updated their disclosure table on BioSketch and current and pending support. This now includes a requirement to disclose startup packages provided by proposing organizations or third-party organizations. So if there is a third-party entity that is providing a startup package, that will also need to be disclosed. NSPM 33. So this is the National Security Presidential Memo related to guidance for federal agencies on disclosure requirements for foreign support and foreign influence. So this is still being evaluated by ORSP. We're still looking at it and trying to assess how its implementation is going to affect us and if we're going to need to make any changes to our processes and policies. But ultimately, the highlights in this memo, it standardizes disclosure requirements and forms and format across federal sponsors. The implementation is required not to stigmatize or treat unfairly any members of the research community, including ethnic or racial minorities. It assigns digital persistent identifiers, for example, your ORCID ID, to senior key personnel. So they're required to have something like that, the federal agencies. And it will extend disclosure requirements to peer reviewers and advisory panels. So thinking in terms of your other support disclosures, that's going to be extended to those individuals. It also requires that grantees, in other words, us, have to establish research security programs with training requirements. So the vast majority of it is guidance to the sponsors, to the federal sponsors, but there is that one additional requirement that's specifically going to affect us. And of course, how the federal sponsors decide to implement this will affect us as well, but they're still trying to make decisions on how they're going to implement. So we're kind of waiting to see how the agencies get together and decide to move forward with this guidance and then how it will impact us. Next slide. So on the home front, a few updates. We have several new faces in our office. Michael Hudson and Erin Kingsley are new project representatives. Michael is on our data use team and Erin is on our government sponsors team. And on our support staff team, we have been joined by Kim Pasquale, Julie Swisher, Elena Wiggins, and Patty Williams. So several new faces. Next slide. A few role changes too within the office. So people you've probably seen before, but now are taking on a new area of responsibility in the office. Lizzie Howard and Karen Sampson have both joined our government sponsors team as project representatives. Daniela has accepted a position as an assistant managing project rep on our government team, and she has been in that position a little while, so you may already have been aware of that, but we hadn't highlighted it in one of these meetings yet. And Karen Almadine also has been in her new position a little while now, but Kathy, as many of you know, retired at the end of last year, and Karen accepted the position of managing project rep on our government sponsors team and has been doing that job for several months now, but wanted to highlight that here for you all. some reminders and some news about our office. So first, and I suspect Kathy Handyside is probably going to touch on this in her update too, but we are going to be transitioning the Commons ID lookup function from our website to ERPM. The reason for that is the software that kind of props that up on our website is going to be unsupported at the end of this month. So we've been working with ITS on a solution to get that search functionality put into ERPM. We thought that would be ideal because now when you're in ERPM, you have that search functionality right there. You're not kind of flipping back and forth with the website. If you are making requests for a new Commons ID, that will still be available on our website, but it will be done through a Google form now. So it'll all be there on the website. It's not a major change. It'll just get kind of a refresh and look a little bit different. But that functionality will be announced in a rapid this week. The final deliverables functionality has been rolled out to all of campus at this point. So last year we were entering final deliverables for everyone across campus for grants that were going to be ending this year or later. And so now you will start seeing reminders on those closeout deliverables from ERPM. If you need training on how to mark those closed once you've actually completed the deliverables, there is a link in the record from January 3rd to online training that we prepared that tells you exactly how you go about closing those deliverables once you have completed the action. We are currently recruiting for 2 new support staff positions and a PR position due to some turnover in our office. We have those vacancies available, and we are actually adding to our support staff team, which is very exciting. Take a look. If you know someone who might be interested, please let them know we're hunting for someone good. So, and wanted to highlight that we actually have some self-serve reporting and data request resources out on our website. So we've inserted the link here. I'm highlighting that because right now our data team is short-staffed and probably will be for a little while. And so any data requests that come to our office are probably going to take a little longer than usual to respond to, or possibly much longer than usual to respond to. And so anything that you can do on the self-service resources, ideally, that's going to be a lot faster for you. So I would certainly recommend checking those out if you've got a data request coming or need something for an upcoming application, because that might be faster than we are able to help right now. So, and I believe that might be the last slide. Yes. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy. Thank you very much, unless there are questions. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kathy Handyside from ITS. As Andrea indicated, I am going to tell you about how to look up the Commons ID in eResearch. That and a few other items are going to be coming your way next Monday, February 28th. Before I get to that, though, I do want to talk a little bit about an update for the NIH or grants.gov forms that are used for NIH, Department of Defense, et cetera. We have a release to those forms to fix a couple of issues on March 21st. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. Let me hit that one first. We specifically decided to wait to implement this particular update. It does introduce support for a few new forms and a bug fix to an issue that a few of you have run into, but it's not something that's critical to the March deadlines for NIH. And so with the input of the RAC Executive Committee, we decided to hold off until after the March deadlines. So what you'll see in that update are some updates for new forms that are available in your grants.gov proposal packages, and also a fix to the display order values, not saving as you may intend on the research and related senior key person profile. So what does that mean for those of you who haven't incurred that problem? The investigators are listed on that form. Some PIs and study teams, project teams like to have those people presented in a certain order. And at the moment, you can't change the order of those folks very easily. It is not something that's required by the guidelines. It's more often a preference of the project team or PI. So this bug fix will allow for that to be accommodated. And so that fix will be included in the update on March 21st. So just wanted to let you know that it is coming. Let me shift gears though and talk about some functionality updates that we're going to be making to eResearch proposal management on Monday. This is going to include an update to the top navigation menu. So for those of you who are in eResearch, you're going to see new tabs across the top, and I'll show you a picture in just a second. We'll talk about the search function for the Commons ID. And then also we've added a new multi-record search that we think will be quite an advantage. This will be available to those of you who have the reviewer or approver roles for your departments, schools, and colleges. And I'll show you that in just a minute. And then last but not least, I want to talk briefly about some maintenance that we are going to do automatically. We're kind of on a focus of data integrity, making sure that we have the most accurate and up-to-date information in the system. And we've noticed that we have a few people who used to be reviewers and they're no longer associated with the department. And so we want to do some maintenance just to clean them up automatically. So I'll tell you more about that. Next slide, please. So starting next Monday, when you sign into eResearch Proposal Management, you will see new options across the top. Some of this is just to kind of clean it up a bit, but instead of maybe 1, 2, or 3 different search options, you'll now have one search option. And when you click on that, you will see tabs available underneath it. For those of you who have the PI and project team role, you will see 2 tabs, one for the project team path search. That's the same search you had previously. It's just got a little bit of an extended name. And then the next thing that you will see is the same functionality as you have today on search. The second tab is the new ERA Commons ID. And if you could move forward on the slide. I will come back and talk about the Commons ID in just another minute, but let me first talk about the search options that you will see when you click on that search if you also have the reviewer and/or approver role. You will see 2 additional options, and the first one is this new multi-record search. And essentially it allows you to look across paths, awards, subcontracts, and unfunded agreements using similar criteria. So if you have, you're looking for a specific project team member and all of their related projects, you can type their name in the personnel field and you will get results for all of the record types that you have selected. This search will default to include all of 4 of those record types, awards, paths, subcase, and unfunded agreements. If you want to deselect, the easiest way to do that is reverse selection. It'll blank out all of the fields and then you can just pick the ones that you want to search against. Right below that, you'll see that there's an option to indicate what status you're looking for. Maybe you want to look across all statuses. Maybe you just want to look for those projects that are active or actionable. And then the criteria there, you can enter a project ID number, the title of the award or path, the name of the contact PI, administrative home, etc. At the bottom of this screen, and that's what's called out in the separate box, there, if you have the record type of award selected, you will also see these additional criteria for the project grant number or the sponsor award ID, whether it's for the direct or prime sponsor. And when you search on those fields, the results will only include awards because those are the only projects that include those pieces of data. But this is a new function. We think it'll be helpful to those of you with the reviewer and approver role. And just as a reminder, that those two roles have access to the whole body of projects in the system, and that's why it's limited to those folks with those roles. So that is the new function that is coming for the multi-record search. The second tab, the path query, is the same path query that you have today. And then you also have the project team path search and the ERA Commons ID. So hopefully you'll find that to be a really helpful new feature. Next slide, please. Oh, I thought I was going to have a slide for the ERA Commons ID. So let me just double check. I thought there was a slide in there for that, and I might have skipped over it.
Sorry if I missed that, Kathy. There was.
I don't think that it was there, but I can
Okay.
just do a real quick. Actually, Chris, can I ask you to skip back 2 slides to that where the Commons ID was right there? If you click on that tab, there are some brief instructions and a field where you can type in the last name, first name, or unique name of the individual you're looking for. And when you put in that criteria, there you will see their name. And even if they don't have a Commons ID, their name will show up and you'll be able to see if there is a Commons ID associated with them. You can also look up by their Commons ID. So you have those various options. And I apologize, I don't know how I missed that slide, but know that that's where you'll find the function. It'll be under the search and one of the tabs that's available to you. So thanks, Chris. So last but not least, I do want to talk about some cleanup that we're going to be doing automatically. So for those of you who have ever been listed on a department tab as a reviewer or an approver, you are also granted an extra role in ERPM of the reviewer. And for most part, we let the departments manage the people who have the department or the reviewer and approver roles. What we have found, though, over time is that as people move from department to department or to role, sometimes they are no longer listed on any departments, but they still have that reviewer role in the system. And so because we're trying to keep the integrity of the system as clear as possible, we've decided to do a automated maintenance. And so we're going to run a background job probably on a pretty frequent basis here. And we're going to look for anybody who has that role, but is not listed on any departments in the system as a reviewer or an approver. And if they don't have a department affiliation, we are going to remove their reviewer or approver role. If this happens to you and it's inappropriate, the way to fix it is have somebody associate you with your department as a reviewer and approver. You'll get the role back immediately. But we really do want to get on top of this. If you do run into any problems, you can always submit a help desk ticket to ITS and we will help walk you through whatever you need to solve that. But we thought this would be the best way to try and keep on top of this. So those are the ends of my slides. Before I hand this over to Chris, I did want to mention that during David and April's presentation, there was a question in the Q&A about how to flatten a PDF file. I posted a document in the answers. So if you are interested, there's a link to an ITS document with instructions on how to flatten a PDF file. You can also find it on our website. So I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Chris. Thanks all.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and invite, I have some colleagues from the RAC DEI work group who are here. So I'm going to invite them to turn on their video, give a quick wave if they'd like. We wanted to make sure that we let you all know who we are. So there might be some other folks who kind of trickle in during the update. And so I will stress that I am merely a spokesperson here, and I don't represent or take sole ownership of the RAC DEI work group. So I couldn't do it without my esteemed colleagues here. And so let me share my screen so we can go through the update. My colleagues are more than welcome to stay on video if they'd like. They can also drop off if that's preferable too. But again, I want to thank all of our members. This was a group of folks who were able to make it today and graciously volunteered to put themselves on video. So again, it's not a comprehensive list of our work group, but I have to say that we have some very engaging discussions, and I hope that what I'm going to be presenting today is relevant and meaningful for all of you, because we've been working very hard on it. So just wanted to reiterate the mission of the RAC DEI work group, which is to develop, foster, and guide a diverse and inclusive research environment at the University of Michigan. And a few updates. These links will all be in the packet that we send out after the RAN meeting. We mentioned this last year, but the Anti-Racism Daily always does 28 days of Black history, and the link is here if you'd like to sign up. Although the month of February is almost done, you can always go back and re-review what they've sent out every day throughout the month of February. We also wanted to let you know about some opportunities through organizational learning. This will go into what we're talking about in our next slide, but things like bystander intervention and then the unconscious bias suite that organizational learning has put out. There are also other courses and classes that organizational learning is conducting right now, so those may also be of interest to you. And then finally, we wanted to give you an update about our upcoming dialogue sessions. And so let me talk a little bit about that. If you recall, last April, our UROP student, Zena Reda, sent out a survey to sort of gauge, now that this work group was formed and set up, what we wanted to actually do, sort of the goals and some of the objectives of this group. So as you may recall, when we shared these results at the RAN meeting in May of last year, we focused specifically on one of the results, which was what folks were interested in learning more about. You can see here that, and this was a multiple choice, so folks could select more than one option. So that's why the numbers may not exactly add up to 127, but an overwhelming majority of folks had a desire to learn more about bystander intervention, unconscious bias, anti-racism, and facilitating conversations around DEI. I mentioned Change It Up. That's a bystander intervention training that organizational learning is currently offering, but we really wanted to focus on unconscious bias and also sort of facilitating discussions. I'm going to launch a quick poll here because we wanted to kind of get you all thinking about this. And so I'm going to launch this in a minute, and we're just going to give you like 30 to 45 seconds to answer this. And the question is, from which source below, you can only choose one, would you estimate that you get most of your information related to COVID-19? So we're going to put this up right now. Feel free to go ahead and answer. Again, we'll give it a couple seconds, but this is really to help us kind of set things up for what we want to talk about next. So we'll give you about 2-3 more seconds. Looks like we have a good response so far. All right, I'm going to close this and share the results. We can see that most folks get their information from mainstream news media, with a close second being, email lists, colleagues, et cetera, which is an other category. So next question for you. What profession do you believe applies to this individual? Is this individual a politician, a serial killer, an artist, or a social justice activist? And again, we'll give you 30 to 45 seconds to complete this. Think about, sort of what comes to mind first for you. Okay, we're getting results in, so we'll give it a few more seconds. All right. And we'll share the results here. So 44% of you all thought this was a serial killer, which I will say is the correct answer. And so maybe the picture gave it away. But I have to say that as I was watching the poll results, serial killer was way up at the top, and then it sort of it came into a little bit closer, as we can see here in terms of the results. So why did we ask you these questions? Well, because we're trying to demonstrate two different things. First is confirmation bias, which is a proven bias that individuals will typically seek out information that confirms their already established beliefs, with sort of constantly overlooking sources of information that might be counter to what they believe. So that's confirmation bias. So that kind of gets you to think about the news sources that you take in as it relates to COVID-19. And I'm not going to get into all the details about COVID-19 because we all know that sometimes the news can be contentious, right? So think about that in terms of confirmation bias. Perception bias is really what you just saw, that you have a perception of someone based on maybe a picture or a very limited interaction with them. And as you could see, some folks already knew that that individual was a serial killer, but it's not apparent from the picture what actually, what profession that individual is associated with. So what we wanted to do, and what we've been spending a lot of our time planning, is how we can help you all sort of uncover these biases, both for yourself and in your workplace, with a goal of helping to facilitate some conversation and some dialogue. And again, this is to meet some of those top needs that you all indicated to us. So what we've decided to do is start with confirmation and perception bias. We also have a longer list of items that we'd like to, different biases that we'd like to address as well. And we're going to have 3 sessions to kind of help introduce this. Those are all going to be focused on confirmation and perception bias, but we wanted to give some options in terms of when you might attend. We're going to be sending out some more communication about this, but again, our first one is coming up on Friday, March 11th, and my colleagues and I have been working very hard and diligently to get this information together, and we're going to be working to kind of help engage the entire group in terms of facilitating these sessions. So that's the main update that we wanted to provide for today. But we are always looking for more interest or help. Anyone who would like to offer their thoughts and ideas to the group, we always welcome your opinion, and we always welcome your participation. So that's all that I have for right now. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to thank my fellow DEI work group members for joining us on screen today. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Sue Kelch.
Great, thanks, Chris. And thank you for all those other wonderful updates. In closing, for me, I'll just post again the rules of the road and a couple of things. The next time you process a P-card transaction, know you are helping the scientists share the results of a discovery at a conference. The next time you submit a no-cost extension, you're giving the PI a chance to complete the research on what could be a groundbreaking discovery. And the next time you submit a grant, 1 minute before the deadline, remember, you are a goddess/god. So wear that tiara proudly. Next slide. It's been a great privilege to MC this RAN meeting. I really appreciate it. You've all touched my life. It's been a wonderful pleasure working with all of you. But now I will be trading in my 2 CFR Part 200 and alarm clock for other things. Right after this meeting, in fact, I'll be packing as we take off for another national park. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences as a research administrator in the University of Michigan and promote the CRA. I wish you all the best. We are the leaders and the best. Go Blue.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Sue. I'll say it again, and I'll say it again. Thank you. for all of your energy and your passion for the RA profession and the CRA Aim Higher program. We owe you a professional debt. But now I think we have another short poll. This is about the upcoming DEI dialogue sessions and your overall experience with today's RAND meeting. Please select the responses that best fit your experience today, just one per question. So the first question is about the DEI dialogue sessions. On a scale from 1 to 5, please let us know how interested you are. 1 being not at all, 5 being extremely. Where can I sign up? We'll give that a minute or a little bit to get your feedback.
And just so you know, Kathy, we actually included both of those questions in this single poll.
Okay. So the second question, you guys are probably already answering it because I believe research administrators always go above and beyond. The second question is, please tell us how relevant you found today's meeting content, again, on a 5-point scale, 1 being not relevant, 2 slightly relevant, all the way up to 5, which is I'm going to go back and use this information right away. So hopefully we've got almost everybody a chance. So Chris, should we?
Yeah, the results are up there. I don't know if you can see them.
So, I need to scroll. So we have some pretty good interest in the dialogue sessions, and we will take all of the feedback on these very seriously so that we make them the best that they can be. And it looks like we did really well. So thank you to all of our content providers today. We've got very good reviews. So Chris, can you advance to the slides? So I just wanted to take a quick moment here to remind you of all of the Navigate and professional development training opportunities. They were scrolling earlier at the very beginning of the webinar. And so here they are all in one slide. Next, please. And as we wrap up, I want to say thank you to everyone. Sue, again, thank you to the subcommittee for putting things together, to all the presenters for bringing such a wonderful content, and to you all of the participants, because you're the reason we're here. So please keep in touch on the forum. Always, if you have ideas, suggestions, other feedback, please let us know at randplans@umich.edu. Save the dates. May 18th and October 27th are scheduled for our next RAND meetings, maybe in person, we don't know yet. And take care, be well. Thank you.
Found out on my way to Harlem